Hello guys, this is Ryan. I'm with Aaliyah, Rafia, Mar, and Adon, and we are going to be presenting about the rat and frog. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about the grass frog back. So its actual species name is called the rana. The kingdom that it is from is the Animalia. So island, it is it has a frog, and within that phylum, the class is because the grass frog is crocodile. So the order that it would be in Nura only Aranidae. The genus is Arana. You go all the way back to the name Arana. Right. Next slide. Okay, now let's talk about the grass frog habitat. So grass frogs are located in South. Its actual locations are near Costa Rica and Mexico. So they are commonly found near streams, ponds, and lakes. Some abiotic factors that the grass frog would have to interact with is air and water, while biotic factors are humans, insects, and the food web. Next slide. Next slide. So let's talk about the grass frogs and the food web. So in the picture right here, you can see a food chain. including- So the grass frog is considered a secondary consumer. So that means it will consume primary consumers such as the grasshopper. Some other primary consumers that they would consume is snails, bugs. While they will consume the grasshoppers, they would be eaten by terrestrial consumers. Their main terrestrial consumer is a snake, while other predators that can eat the frog are ducks and crows. Next. All right, let's talk about the mating patterns and behaviors of grass frogs. So the mating patterns. So after 4 years, the frogs become sexually mature. So their reproduction is aquatic. That, all right. So their reproduction is aquatic. That means that they will lay eggs in water. So frogs will lay over thousands of eggs inside the water. It will take 40 days for the tadpoles to emerge from the eggs. Some behaviors that these frogs have is that these frogs are nocturnal. This means that they'll wake up at night to go hunt for prey. Some interesting things that they can do is that they breathe through their skin. They Some interesting thing that they do is that they can breathe through their skin. And interesting defense mechanism that it has is that it puffs their bodies. This is to ward off predators.
This is the frog circulatory system. It's made up of three main organs: the heart, veins, and arteries. The heart has a left and right atrium. It has a visible arterial trunk, and the veins have visible renal veins. There's a visible renal portal vein, and in the arteries, there's a visible dorsal aorta, the brachial artery, and the common carotid artery. Next slide. The frog, and then this is a frog nervous system. It's also made up of two main organs, the brain and the spinal cord. The brain is made up of the cerebrum, cerebellum, olfactory lobe, and the optic lobe. And while the spinal cord is made up of the spinal cord and the spinal nerves. Next slide. This is the frog reproductive system. For the male reproductive organs, it has testes, seminal vesicle, an ureter, and a spermatic canal. And in the female reproductive system, she has ovaries, an oviduct, and a uterus. Next slide. This is the frog digestive system. The major organs are the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine and large intestine, and the cloaca, while some accessory organs are the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. Next slide. This is the frog locomotion anatomy. In order to leap, it has long, powerful hind limbs. When straightened rapidly while in a crouching position, it propels the frog through the air. It also has moist skin, smooth and moist skin, and special padding on their toes that helps them climb. And the lack of tail also helps it balance.
These are some of the primary reasons why mammals evolved away from amphibians. Amphibians are unable to maintain the moisture in arid and dry environments, so they always need a source of water. They are cold-blooded, so they cannot regulate their body temperature, unlike warm-blooded mammals. They lack an amniotic egg, and they are unable to produce without water. This means that they're always needed to be near some source of water to lay eggs and reproduce. They are highly dependent on a stable climate and environmental conditions, meaning that they suffer if they undergo a period of drought or are separated from water or have no access to it. And during the time of early amphibians, the earth was much more moist and swamp-like, allowing them to thrive, and were actually dominant during the Devonian period.
Okay, and I'm Aaliyah. I'm going to be talking about the rat background. So the rat came from the kingdom of Animalia, from the phylum of Chordata, and the class mammal. It came from the order of Rodentia in the family of Muridae. It also came from the genus Rattus, and the specific name for its species is Rattus norvegicus. The ecological habitat of the rats, they originated from Central Asia. They are usually largely nocturnal. However, now they can be seen wandering in the morning since there is more food source in the morning than at night. They live in burrows or underground and also in between spaces. That's why they can be found inside houses, inside buildings that has food or that is near food. The abiotic factors that affects their living is soil, sunlight, air, and water. And the biotic factors are the humans, insects, and basically the food web. In the food web, rats are important because they are scavengers and they are primary consumers. That means scavengers, they clean up on the seeds that will fall off from the plants or the fruit, and they are basically the cleanup crew. And since they are primary consumers, the secondary consumers will rely on them to survive, not just the rats, but the other primary consumers. Like birds, they rely on eating hamsters and rodents such as the rats. And reptiles, like snakes, also eat rodents and hamsters. Their mating patterns and behavior. On average, a rat's breeding cycle begins after 65 to 100 days of being born, especially on the female. Fun fact, they actually mate year-round. That's why there's so many rats all around the world in our environment, and they just reproduce basically like every month or so. And the normal gastration period is usually 20 to 25 days. And then usually after that, they can reproduce again within the next month or so. Since rats are normally nocturnal, when they are threatened, they will aggressively react to biting the person or the predator, but it can also result to chasing you. So it is true that rats will chase you if you tend to threaten them. And now Rafael will explain the rat's anatomy system.
So the digestive system starts in the mouth, and it contains the teeth and the tongue. And from that, the food passes into the esophagus and is directed into the stomach. And from the stomach, the food moves into the small intestine where most of the digestion occurs. And from that, we have the two digestive glands, which are the liver and the pancreas. And the small intestine is followed by the large intestines, which is also called the colon, and it's where the water and the salts are reabsorbed and where the solid waste forms. Next slide. So the circulatory system is divided up into 4 parts: the 2 upper chambers, which are the right and left atrium, and the 2 lower ventricles. So the pulmonary veins carry so the heart is protected by the pericardium, which is a double membranous sac. And the heart has 2 chambers, the right atrium and the left atrium. So the blood enters the right atrium and it passes through 3 main vessels, which are the right and left superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. And from that, the blood goes to the right atrium and goes into the right ventricle, and it goes into the pulmonary trunk where it divides into the 2 lung arteries, and it goes into the lungs to become oxygenated. The blood then goes into the left ventricle and leaves through the aorta, and it goes throughout the rest of the body. Next slide. So the reproductive system of the males, it starts off from the testes, and they're inside the cervical sac. And the testes are coiled in tubes, which are called the epididymis, and it collects and stores the sperm cells. The tubular vas deferens moves the sperm from the epididymis to the urethra, and it carries the sperm out of the body. The lumpy brown glands located on the left and right are the urinary bladders, and they are the seminal vessels. The glands below the bladder are the prostate glands, and they're usually partially wrapped around the penis. The seminal vessels and the prostate glands secrete materials that form the seminal fluid, which is the semen. Next slide. So the reproductive system of the female, it starts with the ovaries, which produce the eggs, and they're located in the region of the kidneys and are in close association with the fallopian tube. And the fallopian tubes are tubes which are small and highly coiled and lead to the uteri. So a rat actually has 2 uteri, and it enters the vagina, which opens outside of the vaginal office. Next slide, please. So the excretory system, it's composed of the right and left kidneys, and they're responsible for cleaning the blood from all the waste, especially the nitrogenous waste, and reabsorbing water and disposing liquid waste in like the forms of urine. Next slide. So just like humans, rats have different sections of the brain which control different functions. So in the nervous system, we have the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Next slide.
So the most recent common ancestor of the frog and rat evolved between 416 to 359 million years ago. This evolution occurred during the Devonian era, and the most significant event or trait of the Devonian era was fish developing into tetrapods and developing weight-bearing limbs. All frogs and rats have lungs, bony skeletons, 4 legs, jointed feet, organs, bilateral symmetry, gill slits or notochords, jaws, and are deuterostomes.
Here are our rat references, and here's our frog references. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.